Hello, I'm Michelle Katanak, self-esteem and body confidence coach, helping emotional eaters break free from food so that they can live their most authentic lives. Now, I wanted to put together this video to talk to you about something that's really important, and it's the diet-binge cycle. So if you're an emotional eater, if you binge eat, then please watch this video, because this is an area that is really misunderstood. So if you just look at my diagram here, I've basically put down what the diet binge cycle looks like. So at the top we have the food restriction. So this can be dieting, this can be any form of extreme healthy eating where you're really trying to control what you eat, and then you're getting those feelings of guilt when you eat something that's bad, that you know that you shouldn't be eating. So often when there's food restriction, that leads to deprivation and feelings of deprivation. So if you're suddenly banning foods that you really enjoy, so perhaps you love chocolate or cake, and you're suddenly forcing yourself not to eat those things, you're going to feel really deprived. And that's not just because you are missing those foods, but your body is actually missing the pleasurable experience that comes with eating those foods. And that can often lead to a binge. Now, when you start binging, you then have those feelings of shame, of guilt, and that will lead to further emotional eating. So emotional eating can be a consequence of binge eating, but it's also when you have a need that's not being met. So maybe you're feeling really lonely in that moment, you've had a bad day, just something doesn't feel right in your life, and you're using food as a fantastic substitute. Now, for some people, it's not food. It could perhaps be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be sex. Something else that is your go-to in those times of needs when a certain need is not being met. Then what happens is you beat yourself up, you absolutely hate yourself, you have more guilt and shame, and this has a knock-on effect on your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself. You feel absolutely crap, you feel like a failure, you feel like you've let yourself down, that you've let other people down around you. And then if you've got low self-esteem, what's going to happen? It's going to impact your body image. You're going to feel absolute crap about the way that you look, and obviously when you feel like that about your body, that is going to be triggering more food restrictions. So it's going to give you the motivation and the incentive to go on a diet, to start to eat healthy again, and so the vicious cycle continues. Now, so many of us, we basically stay up here. So we sit in this area, the food restriction, the dieting, the healthy eating. We jump on any dieting bandwagon. So perhaps one week you'll try and paleo, perhaps the other week you'll try and gluten-free, because you see the food restriction, the control of food, as the answer to your solution. You believe that if you can get that bit right and then have the body that you really want, then everything else will be better. All of a sudden you'll feel better about your body, you'll feel better about yourself. But the reality isn't that at all. The reality is you have to start down here. Okay, in order to get everything else under control, in order to overcome your binge eating and your emotional eating, you need to work on your self-esteem first. So this is the area where I come in. So what is self-esteem and what drives our self-esteem? So we know that your emotional eating can trigger your self-esteem. And indeed, some foods can give you a feeling of low self-esteem because there is a kind of chemical reaction involved. But essentially, your self-esteem comes from your childhood. So all of your programming and conditioning that you get through your childhood essentially leads to your self-esteem, whether it's a good self-esteem or a negative self-esteem. So I just want to talk quickly about children and the way we are when we're born. So we are all born just so completely pure and natural. We have so much wisdom. The way we eat very intuitively, which basically means we eat what we need when we need it. The way that we form relationships, it's all just very pure and innocent. There's no judgment. And we as adults, especially as parents, we always assume that we need to be teaching our children things, but really we can learn so much from children and the way they are, because that's how we were once. But eventually that's taken away because conditioning comes in. Now, we all have a map or a model of the world, and this is where all our programming, our limiting beliefs, our opinions, all those things, they sit in our model of the world, which we inherit from our parents, and then we automatically pass those on to our children. And basically what happens is we have these lovely little children who are being completely themselves, and we try to change them because we try to craft them and model them into people who we think are going to be more acceptable to society. We shape them to fit into our model of the world. And what happens when you're non-verbally telling somebody or trying to change somebody, what message are you actually giving that person? You're giving that person the message that they're not good enough, that they're not enough. And that's what creates a low self-esteem. And we go through life with that feeling of not being good enough, of not being enough. So this is where the real work is, and this is where I come in, because I like to teach people to be themselves, to be more authentic, to really tune into their natural wisdom. And when you can deal with this, and obviously a lot of what sits in your conditioning, which impacts your self-esteem, is obviously your past experiences, perhaps things that people have said to you. There are so many layers to your self-esteem, but it's this that you need to work on first, because if you don't work in this area, then this cycle is going to continue. And people spend years and years, decades on diets because they only focus in this area. When one diet doesn't work, they just try another one, and then they spend a whole lifetime just feeling really, really miserable. And it's because they haven't done this work. If you can start here, everything else will just naturally fall into place and sort itself out. So thank you for listening to this video. I hope it has helped, and if you do have any questions, please just PM me or comment below.